Good morning, my beautiful babes and babettes. I'm your resident active advocate, and I'm cold. And I'm going to sit here and whine about it. That's not true. I am actually here to give you part 2 of Special Edward. Because I consulted with my lovely consultant last night, and she said that I should probably give a little more background about how Edward ends up where he does and making the decision that he does. So yesterday I had talked about Edward attempting to fake an intellectual disability or 2 or 3 through flunking the test that his guidance counselor and psychologist give him to determine whether he can or should be included in special ed. And what happens throughout the book, basically until the very end, is that the whole idea surrounding what Edward is doing is that consciously he just thinks he's lazy, and he doesn't have a problem with that because he says he wants to get into special ed so that he can slack off and have a good excuse for slacking off, because he keeps saying, I'm doing this to make my life easier, not to make my life harder. So, for example, there is a question on the psychological analysis of, do you hear voices? And that is one of the questions he takes no for, because he said, I want to be, quote, special, but I don't want to be that special, and the whole idea of, I'm just doing this so that I can take an intellectual holiday is very much on his mind on the conscious level. Subconsciously, though, and this comes out more towards the middle to end of the book, Edward really does think he is stupid, and he has kind of taken that whole idea upon himself because that's pretty much what society tells him he is. In reality, Edward does have learning disabilities, possibly several. He has moderate, I would say, dyslexia, because throughout the book there are cases of him doing letter reversals. He has problems with his attention span, and he has short-term processing issues where it's one of the examples that's given is that he takes a history test that he actually studied for, and he misses half the test because he didn't realize it was a two-sided thing. So it's like you have writing on one side of the sheet and writing on the other side of the sheet, and there are 3 sheets to this test, so 6 sides basically. He missed the back of each page, even though he went through the test twice to make sure he had answered everything. This test that he does in the special education room, and he said that he wanted to study for it to, quote, show that the special ed accommodations do help me, because otherwise he would not have studied for this test. He just couldn't be bothered. But he actually does have processing issues that led him to accidentally missing half the test, even though he reviewed his work twice. So when he takes tests legitimately, he actually gets a 90% on that history test. And up to that point, one of the problems with the reinforcement of the you're just stupid / lazy idea is that his teachers pretty much reinforce it for him, his history teacher and his math teacher especially, because they just think, well, you're being lazy and you're not applying yourself. If you were to actually apply yourself, it would turn out better for you. That is not always going to be the case, and especially for people who really do have learning disabilities. And with Edward, it's not a matter of not applying himself, because when he does apply himself, yes, he can succeed. But it's also the processing issues that he has that lead him to missing out on what he could otherwise get if he had a special accommodation. I shouldn't even say special accommodation. Accommodation by nature is just something that you get to bring out your full potential if you are a person with an intellectual or learning disability. There is this bit that George Carlin did in one of his comedy acts, and the line goes, and personally I find this kind of offensive, but he said, "We don't have any stupid people in this culture anymore. Everyone has a learning disability." I like George Carlin. I respect his work. He can be very abrasive, but he can also be very telling of what society is actually like. I don't agree with him on this point. I fully disbelieve in the idea of there being stupid people in the world. Stupid is not wanting to know, okay? So basically, anyone who consciously practices a negative ism, in my mind, is being stupid. They are not stupid, they are acting stupid. There is a difference here. No one is by nature stupid. You have to be taught, for one thing, and for another, you have to practice it consciously. If you're doing that kind of thing subconsciously, you're not stupid. You're just being ignorant. Ignorance is not knowing, okay? Stupidity is not wanting to know. Ignorance is not knowing. There's a difference. When it comes to Edward, he does fully believe that he is stupid, and that notion is reinforced for him by his teachers, who just say, "You're not trying hard enough, you're not applying yourself," but they don't recognize that he has undiagnosed disabilities, probably more than one, as I said, especially with the dyslexia issue. That does progressively get better over time as he ages, or it seems to be working that way. But he still does do letter reversals, and he sees a sample of his work from an earlier grade where he had written a word completely backwards, as though it were a mirror image of the word he had meant to write. So Edward's processing issues lead him also not to want to try, because, as I say, on the subconscious level, he fears that he is stupid. And a lot of the time, a fear of failure will subconsciously lead to a lack of trying. If you believe that you are going to fail, no matter what you do, no matter what you try, you're not even going to bother trying. This can be conscious, this can be subconscious. This will not always happen in every case. I had a fear of failure in school when I was younger. When I hit, I want to say early to mid university, and people started treating me not only as an adult, but also as, this is your specialty, this is your field, and obviously we can tell that you enjoy this. And I wasn't doing math anymore. Bless the gods! That's when I started shining, because I had my hands on things that I enjoyed doing. And one of the major points that I learned in university is to do things for the sake of doing them, to do things for the sake of the process, not for the sake of making the grade. Grades are not exactly arbitrary, but in Special Edward, he does state, there is no difference between a 55 and a 95, at least to him. The difference only lies, really, in the application. How those grades are applied to you, how other people see you based on those grades, and therefore how you see yourself based on those grades. If you continually get 55s and 60s, you're probably not going to feel that great about the whole process of education, regardless of whether you are applying yourself or not. When you see people around you getting 90s, you're going to think, okay, they're either tryhards or they're just naturally smarter than I am. Neither of which is necessarily true. People take to the school system in different ways. So standardized, regimented education is not going to work for everyone. People learn in different ways. This is scientifically proven. People learn in different ways. For one example, I'm really good with words. I'm horrifically bad with numbers. No matter how hard I try, I can do basically up to and including BEDMAS in my head. Brackets, exponents, division, multiplication, addition, subtraction. Okay, but that whole thing basically stops in high school. You know, like mid high school or so. If you take any mathematics course in university, and I took stats twice because I failed it the first time around, um, but I did not do well. I did not do well because I don't enjoy the field. I just don't. It's not my thing. Whereas when I'm using words, I do a lot better because this is my art, or this is one of my arts. You know, I'm a arts, humanities, philosophy, languages kind of person. I'm a people person. I'm not a data person. I'm what in psychology is called qualitative as opposed to quantitative. Qualitative being the qualities, quantitative being the numbers. So that's where I'm not going to say I have a learning disability in mathematics. I don't think I do. I just really, really don't like it. But when it comes to Edward, he's not wonderful with language processing. And as I mentioned, he has dyslexia, at least moderate dyslexia. But he can't process in the same way as other people can. So, of course, people are going to think that he's dumb, except for when he talks. If you could do exams orally, he would be passing them with flying colors. He's a very good talker. He's just not a good writer. And, you know, he even says towards the end of the book, yes, I do have ideas for great stories and great speeches and things like that, but I can only articulate them in my head. When I write them down on paper, they don't come out like they come out in my head. So it's basically brain to page processing that he struggles with. And that's just one example of one kind of learning disability. Learning disabilities are both very real and very diverse, and they happen a lot in the real world. The problem is if you are not aware that they exist, you really could get caught up in the ethos of either I'm not trying or I'm stupid. And neither of those are necessarily helpful. I don't think they're helpful at all. So if you're watching this right now and you feel like you might need extra help in your schooling or in your career, then I would absolutely encourage you to ask for it, because not only are you entitled to it legally, but also it's going to help you throughout your life if you understand that there could potentially be an issue here that's not being addressed. And if there is, how do I work with it? How do other people work with it? And when you find out what it is, if you do have an intellectual disability of some kind, if you find out what it is, it's going to make your life a lot easier. This is where the medical model is definitely a good thing and can translate into social ramifications for the better, not for the worse. So that is basically the summation of Special Edward. I got the name of the author wrong in the video yesterday. Google lied to me. Google tends to do that to me a bit. I can't remember the name. Okay, I believe it's Eric something. I'm probably going to be corrected on that by my consultant, and I will mention it to you properly tomorrow before we get into our next book. I know what our next book is. I just don't know what I'm going to do about it yet. So we will find out tomorrow together, and it will be a lovely, wonderful experience. All right, I will see y'all tomorrow. Have a lovely day. Stay warm. And the sun is out. Yay. Mwah.